It's really late, or brutally early, depending on how you look at it. Another 3 a.m. wake-up call, another attempt to just exist. My name's Amelia, and usually this channel is about surviving the first year of motherhood. The sleep deprivation, the endless laundry, the questionable fashion choices, the sheer mind-numbing repetition. But lately it's become about something else entirely. Something I can't explain. Something that's happening right here, in my home, in my son's room. You know that feeling, right? That split second when you're completely alone and you swear you hear something, the house settling, the wind playing tricks, or just your mind unraveling because you've had 3 hours of broken sleep in the last 48. For weeks now, I've been trying desperately to rationalize it, to tell myself I'm just overtired. But it's getting harder, a lot harder, and honestly, it is so. I'm terrified beyond words. I don't know what this is. I just know I can't keep it to myself anymore. This feels different. Dangerous. If you've ever felt that inexplicable chill down your spine when you're sure you're alone, if you've ever questioned what's real and what's just your exhausted brain playing tricks, then please subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, because tonight I'm going to try and show you what's happening, and maybe, just maybe, by sharing this, someone out there can tell me I'm not actually losing my mind. The quiet hum of our suburban cul-de-sac was usually a source of comfort, a constant, reassuring backdrop to our lives. The distant thrum of traffic on the nearby freeway, the occasional muffled bark of old Mr. Henderson's perpetually grumpy pug, the familiar, gentle whir of our refrigerator. These were the mundane symphony of normalcy. For Amelia, 36, a graphic designer now on an extended maternity leave, normalcy itself felt like a forgotten luxury. Her son, Leo, at just 6 months old, was a colicky angel during the day and a fussy, demanding demon at night. Sleep, for Amelia, had long since become a mythical, unreachable creature like a unicorn. It started subtly, as these things always do, a whisper barely audible over the white noise of her own exhaustion. A faint, distinct click on the landing upstairs, like a floorboard shifting underfoot. She'd be downstairs, mindlessly folding Leo's impossibly tiny onesies, the smell of warm laundry detergent filling the air, and she'd hear it. A quick, sharp sound. She'd freeze, her hands still, straining to hear it again, then dutifully blame the old house settling. Built in the late 70s, our charming, split-level home definitely had its quirks. Mark, her husband, a stoic software engineer, would just grunt old pipes, or it's just the foundation shifting if she ever mentioned it, dismissing her unease with the easy logic of the practical. Then came the whispers, so soft, so fleeting, they were almost imperceptible, often blending with the rush of blood in her ears, like tissue paper rustling right behind her ear, or the barest, coldest sigh of breath caressing her nape. She'd be rocking Leo in the glider in his nursery, humming a tired lullaby, and she'd feel it. The cold draft, even when the windows were sealed tight against the autumn chill. She'd turn her head sharply, her neck stiff, scanning the empty room, her eyes lingering on the closed closet door. Nothing. Just the gentle, almost imperceptible sway of the mobile above Leo's crib. Its little plastic sheep seemingly watching her with their painted, unblinking eyes. Sleep deprivation, she'd force herself to believe. Her brain was just misfiring, struggling to process reality on such minimal rest. One Tuesday night, Mark was away on a business trip to Seattle, leaving Amelia utterly alone with Leo. The silence of the house, usually a welcome reprieve, now felt vast and amplifying, broken only by Leo's rare, peaceful breaths from the baby monitor. Amelia was in the living room, trying to catch up on an old sitcom, the volume kept low so as not to disturb the fragile peace. That's when she heard it again, clearer this time, cutting through the canned laughter from the TV. A distinct, childlike humming coming from the hallway, just outside the living room. It was tuneless, mournful, like a child trying desperately to remember a song it once loved. or perhaps one it had heard countless times before. Her heart leapt into her throat, a frantic bird trapped in her ribs. Leo? No, he was definitely asleep. The baby monitor on the coffee table beside her was silent, its small screen showing his undisturbed crib. She snatched up the TV remote and hit the mute button. The humming stopped. The sudden silence was more terrifying than the sound itself. Amelia sat motionless, straining every nerve to hear. The only sound now was the distant, reassuring whir of the fridge from the kitchen. She blamed it on the stress, the crushing loneliness of Mark being gone, the sheer, relentless weight of being a new mom with no break. She got up slowly, deliberately, walked to the hallway and flipped on the overhead light. Nothing. Just the faded floral wallpaper, the old creaky coat rack, the muted family photos smiling back at her from their frames. Everything was normal. Too normal. The next day it escalated, subtle but undeniable. She was in the kitchen, carefully measuring formula for Leo's bottle, when she glanced at her reflection in the dark, mirrored glass of the microwave door. For a split second she saw it. A shadow detach itself from the wall directly behind her. Not a human shadow, not an object, but something elongated, impossibly distorted, vaguely humanoid, like a smudge on the very air itself. It seemed to lean towards her, a sense of immense weight and dark curiosity, then vanished as quickly as it appeared. Amelia spun around, splashing warm milk on the counter. The kitchen was utterly empty. Bright sunlight streamed through the window over the sink, mocking her terror. She leaned heavily against the counter, cold sweat prickling her skin. This wasn't fatigue, this wasn't stress. Something was here, and it was making its presence known. That night she didn't just struggle to sleep, she couldn't. She lay rigid in bed, her eyes wide open, listening. Every familiar creak of the old house, every innocent rustle of the wind outside sent a sharp jolt of raw fear through her. Around 2:40 a.m., precisely when the house felt coldest, she heard it through the baby monitor again. Leo was stirring. She clicked on the monitor's video feed, her heart already racing. Leo was indeed fussing, twisting his head from side to side in the crib, his little legs kicking, but then she saw something else. In the bottom right corner of the crib, barely visible in the grainy night vision, something small and dark seemed to be moving. It looked like a rag doll, one of Leo's soft toys. But he didn't have a rag doll. He had a beloved worn teddy bear, a fluffy bunny, a bright yellow duck. This thing was dark, with what looked like a single large button eye, and it was slowly, deliberately crawling up the side of the crib railing towards Leo's head. Its movements were too fluid, too unnatural for a toy. Amelia's scream caught in her throat, a choked sound of pure horror. She snatched the monitor, then dropped it to the floor with a clatter as she scrambled out of bed, her limbs feeling like lead. She burst into Leo's nursery, flicking on the main light. The crib was empty. Leo wasn't there. Her breath hitched, a ragged sob catching in her chest. Her eyes darted wildly around the room, desperate, unseeing. Her heart hammered so violently she felt dizzy, the blood roaring in her ears. Where was he? Did the monitor glitch? Was she finally losing it? No, she had seen it. The ragdoll, the movement, Leo. Then a faint whimpering sound came from under the crib. She dropped to her knees, heedless of the dust and splinters, peering into the deep shadows. Leo was there, huddled against the back wall, crying softly, his little fists rubbing his eyes. Relief, hot and overwhelming, washed over her, so intense it made her dizzy. It was immediately followed by a wave of crushing confusion and renewed terror. Perfect. How did he get there? He was 6 months old. He couldn't possibly crawl out of his crib. As she reached for him, her hand brushed against something cold and damp on the beige carpet, right under the crib where Leo had been. She pulled her hand back instinctively. On the carpet, clearly visible now in the sudden light, was a faint, damp handprint, too small for her own, too long and slender for a baby's. It was the size of a child's hand, but the fingers were impossibly elongated, almost skeletal, pressing deep into the carpet fibers, and it was slightly glowing with a sickly, faint green luminescence, fading even as she stared like a dying ember. Amelia scooped Leo into her arms, clutching him so tightly he let out a surprised little cry. She backed away from the crib, her eyes fixed on the fading handprint, now just a damp, discolored patch. "Who are you?" she whispered into the silent room, her voice barely audible, raw with a new terrifying understanding. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something sweet and cloying, like rotten, forgotten flowers. The temperature in the room plummeted sharply, making her teeth chatter uncontrollably. The nursery light above flickered once, twice, then steadied, leaving lingering after-images in her vision. Then from the closet door, which she distinctly remembered closing and latching earlier that evening, a soft, deliberate tapping began. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded like fingernails against dry old wood, slow, rhythmic, insistent. Amelia whimpered, holding Leo closer, rocking him unconsciously. The tapping grew louder, more frantic. Tap, 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 scrape, like something was trying to claw its way out from the inside. The wood of the closet door seemed to subtly bulge, then recede, as if a formless pressure was being applied from within. She backed out of the room, fumbling for the door handle, her eyes wide with unadulterated terror. As she pulled the nursery door shut, forcing it closed against the unseen pressure, she heard a final, chilling thud from inside the closet, as if something heavy had just dropped to the floor, followed by a profound, unnatural stillness. That night, Amelia didn't sleep. She sat in the living room, Leo sleeping soundly, almost miraculously, in her arms, her back pressed against the cold wall, a heavy kitchen knife clutched in her other hand. She watched the hallway, her mind racing, desperate to find any rational explanation. Had someone broken in? But there were no signs, no forced entry, no disturbed locks, and the things she'd seen. The handprint, the rag doll. When Mark returned the next day, haggard from his trip, he found her in the living room, pale, exhausted, and clutching Leo as if her life literally depended on it. She told him everything, the whispers, the shadows, the rag doll, Leo under the crib, the glowing handprint, the tapping in the closet, the chilling cold. Mark, bless his practical scientific heart, tried desperately to rationalize it. Sleep deprivation, babe, you're exhausted. Hallucinations. The house settles, old houses make noises. Leo's just learning to wiggle around in his sleep. He probably rolled out. He checked the closet, the windows, the monitor. Nothing overtly amiss. He held her, comforting her, stroking her hair, but his eyes held a subtle, heartbreaking skepticism that made her feel even more isolated, like she was truly losing her grip on reality. But the incidents didn't stop. They became, well, more insidious, more personally invasive. One morning she found Leo's mobile, unplugged from its base, slowly spinning by itself above his crib, the plastic sheep now all facing inwards, as if watching something in the crib. Another time the refrigerator hum in the kitchen changed subtly, producing a low, rhythmic thump, thump, thump that sounded uncannily like a slow, heavy heartbeat emanating from deep inside the appliance. She ripped open the freezer, expecting to find a loose ice tray. But it was perfectly still, humming its normal, harmless whir. The house, once her sanctuary, became a silent, watchful prison. Every creak, every shift of shadow, every unexplained cold spot was a potential threat. The air felt heavier, colder, especially in Leo's nursery, now a room she entered with profound reluctance. She started seeing things in her peripheral vision. Fleeting, gaunt figures just beyond her direct sight, always gone when she snapped her head to look. They were never fully formed, just suggestions of impossibly thin limbs or elongated shadows that shouldn't be there. She found herself avoiding mirrors, terrified of what she might glimpse behind her own reflection. One terrifying evening, as she was putting Leo to bed, exhaustion weighing her down like lead, she sang him his favorite lullaby, her voice a cracked whisper. As she finished the last verse, a second voice, thin and reedy, joined in from the corner of the room, perfectly harmonizing with her, then continuing the song even after she stopped. Its words a distorted, mournful garble that made her skin crawl. It was the same tuneless humming she'd heard before, now with a chilling, spectral vocal quality. Amelia froze, her hand still resting on Leo's small, warm back. She felt a child's small, cold hand, unseen but undeniably there, reach up and gently grasp her fingers, intertwining them. "Don't sing that song, Mummy," a voice whispered, soft yet utterly clear, right into her ear from behind her. "It only makes him stronger." Amelia turned slowly, her blood freezing in her veins, her mind screaming in terror. Standing in the doorway of the nursery, bathed in the sickly yellow glow of the nightlight, was not a shadow, not a ripple. It was a figure. It was a child, small, slender, with stringy dark hair hanging over its face. It wore what looked like a faded, old-fashioned nightgown, somehow too large for its frame. Its skin was pale, almost translucent like moonlight on aged parchment. Its head was slightly tilted, as if listening intently to something only it could hear. And from the depths of the shadows cast by its hair, two pinpricks of dull, glowing red light stared directly at Amelia. Not bright, malevolent eyes like in a horror movie, but a soft, unsettling internal luminescence, like embers under ash, filled with an ancient, unbearable sadness. It didn't move, it just stood there watching her, a quiet, profound despair radiating from it, heavy in the air. Amelia instinctively backed away, stumbling towards Leo's crib, her only thought to shield him, to put herself between him and this thing. "Who? What are you?" she stammered, her voice a thin, reedy squeak, barely audible above her hammering heart. The child figure raised a single, emaciated hand, its fingers long and delicate, and pointed towards the far wall, where Leo's brightly coloured growth chart hung. "He wants to play," it whispered, its voice like the rustling of dry leaves, hollow and ancient. "He wants him to stay like I stayed." Then, from behind the child figure, from the dark, shadowy hallway beyond the nursery door, a new, immense presence began to emerge. It was not a clear shape, but a vast, creeping darkness that seemed to absorb the ambient light, making the entire hallway plunge into an inky blackness. It flowed like viscous oil, slowly, relentlessly, pushing the child figure forward into the room. It felt immense, ancient, and utterly, profoundly wrong, radiating a cold, consuming hunger. The temperature in the room plummeted, the air becoming icy and heavy, making it hard to breathe. The child figure looked back at the creeping, formless darkness that was consuming the hallway, then turned its translucent gaze back to Amelia. A look of pure, desperate terror crossed its face, not just for itself, but for her. With a final, sorrowful whisper, raw with desperation, "Run! Please just run!" It lunged forward with surprising force, not at Amelia, but towards the crib. It placed both its spectral hands on the railing and pushed with all its might, overturning the heavy wooden crib with a sudden, deafening crash that shook the very foundations of the house. The noise was deafening, shattering the oppressive, terrifying silence. It bought Amelia a precious, critical second. She didn't hesitate. Driven by a primal, maternal instinct, she snatched Leo from the bed where he had been peacefully sleeping and bolted out of the nursery past the now fallen crib and down the hallway. Behind her she heard the sound of the vast, creeping darkness flowing fully into the nursery, followed by a chilling, frustrated shriek that seemed to tear at the very fabric of the house itself. It was a sound of immense power, denied. She ran out of the house, not stopping until she was across the street, huddled in the relative safety of Mr. Henderson's porch, clutching Leo, both of them shivering violently in the cool night air. She dared a glance back at her house, its windows now seeming like empty, accusing eyes, the lights within flickering wildly, erratically. The next morning, Mark returned home to find Amelia and Leo huddled, exhausted and traumatized at a neighbor's house. He found the nursery crib overturned, its contents scattered, but no other signs of forced entry. He still tried to rationalize it, to blame her exhaustion, the stress of new motherhood. But when Amelia showed him the faint, elongated handprint on the carpet, which miraculously had not entirely faded, his skepticism finally shattered. His face went ashen. Amelia never slept soundly in that house again. They moved within weeks, leaving behind the suburban home and the whispers that clung to its walls. Life went back to a semblance of normal, but the experience had left an indelible mark. Amelia still checks the baby monitor compulsively, even now that Leo is a toddler. Every unexplainable sound, every shifting shadow sends a jolt of primal fear through her. And sometimes late at night, when the house is quiet and the moon is full, she swears she can still hear it. A faint, mournful humming just on the edge of her hearing. A terrifying, gentle reminder that some things once invited in or